Chapter 1 I ordered a game but got a daughter for free. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 98, 99, 100. Who? Who? That was hard. Finally, I've completed my morning routine. Let's take a bath now. A handsome man pants for a moment while holding a blue towel in his hand. His upper body was naked but he was wearing black trousers. He walked towards the bathroom. 10 minutes later, he walked out of the bathroom wearing black pants and a black shirt. He went to the kitchen and prepared a meal. While preparing a meal, he shouted, "Lily, turn on the news on TV." A few seconds later, the TV turned on and automatically changes to the news channel. It was an advanced home controlling system that he created for fun. He named it Lily for simplicity. Oh, his name was Brian Jackson. He was a 20.5 years old graduate who studied data science. He was currently unemployed. Of course, it's not because he wasn't good at studies, rather he was interested in UMA, Universal Martial Alliance. A powerful alliance that is currently ruling the post-apocalyptic world filled with zombies, vampires, werewolves, aliens, and the most common race, humans. To enter the Universal Martial Alliance, a person needs to have supernatural abilities. But, Brian was a human, not a superhuman. Since UMA consists of humans, vampires, and werewolves, he could join with other skills but he doesn't want to. He wanted to join it with pure strength, but unless a miracle happens, it wouldn't possible. And, this miracle came in the form of a virtual game known as a new god. It was a breakthrough for human civilization. Once a person enters this game, he must create a character and land in a supernatural world of magic. The person can level up by completing quests and dungeons. Each time a person levels up, the 1/10th of the strength given by that level will merge with the real body of the human. And, each time a person dies, his level will drop by 10 and the real body will lose 10% of his strength until he regains it through leveling up. Brian put the toast on the plate, an omelette with it, and a glass of juice. He took his breakfast to the living room and placed it on the table. Breaking news. The war between vampire and werewolves in Zone G has ended with no sides taking a major win. Vampires and werewolves have signed the peace treaty under the regulation of Universal Martial Alliance. Breaking news. The VMORPG New Gods have finally announced the real-life currency exchange system will start from noon. Oh! The players from all over the world have been waiting for this feature. And now, everyone can enter the game without any worries of money. Hearing the news, Brian put the toast in his mouth and thought, did they complete the food generation mechanism? Otherwise, they wouldn't announce the real-life currency exchange. After all, food is something that keeps us alive. Well, this has nothing to do with me anymore. I just hope the parcel will arrive soon. Unfortunately, the parcel didn't come. He finished his breakfast and stretched his body a little. Maybe I should go out for a walk. Thinking so, Brian asked Lily to turn off the TV and walked out of the house. He locked the door and moved on towards the elevator. He was currently living in a 2-room apartment, though he lives alone. His parents died way early during the vampire breakout in his area where thousands of people died as well. Now, this little town has expanded into a zone named Zone B. When the vampires attacked his parents, they sacrificed themselves for him to live. He lived and found himself in the hospital. Doctors said that he was found 5 days after the war in Zone B ended, and for some reason, he has no memories of that time. Doctors concluded that he was unconscious for 5 whole days. After his elevator hit on the bottom floor, he walked out of a 20-story building. There were few people walking around the buildings. Some of them were hairy beasts with facial structures like wolves and body structures like humans. While some had hairy bodies, some had clean-shaved bodies, especially women. The only way to distinguish them from normal humans would be through their fluffy ears. They were werewolves. Due to the rules and regulations of the Universal Martial Alliance, humans and other races lived together in peace and harmony. Of course, it was only for Zone B and a few others. In some zones like Zone F and J, the war is still going strong. The recent peace treaty in Zone G was due to the successful involvement of the Universal Martial Alliance. While walking towards the train station, Brain couldn't help but think maybe I should stock up on more meals. If possible, I would like to play New Gods as much as I can and grow stronger. Anyway, I don't have anyone else to take care of. Thinking of this, Brian stopped at the shopping mall station. Zones were divided into several stations and most of the transportation was done by trains. Shopping mall station was nearly 50 kilometers big. It had every kind of shopping mall and thus, it was also the most crowded station. As soon as he got off the train, he stumbled against a group of people. Because the crowd was huge, he had kept his pockets safe. After all, thieves are most common in the places like these. Brian walked while doing his best to dodge people. He made his way to the grocery lane. After reaching in front of the grocery lane, he entered a small supermarket and took out a cart. Then, he went straight toward the food section. "Yo Brian. I thought you had already done enough shopping for a few days." A voice came from behind as Brian turned around and saw a man of his age. He was slightly short and had a brown face. His shoulders and chest were wide though. It looked like he exercised a lot. "Hey, James. I am just doing some additional shopping. What about you? Aren't you prepared to enter New Gods?" Brian asked while walking towards the ramen corner. "Don't worry, I have already prepared everything for a month. By the way, I heard our parcels will be delivered today, is that true? I couldn't track the location of the delivery. It seems to be related to security. I called Barry but he said that he can't reveal the exact location." James patted his chest and proudly spoke. "Yeah, that's the case. Nobody can reveal anything related to New Gods to the outside. If he reveals anything, he might lose his life. New Gods was made by Universal Martial Alliance. Instead of delivering them each day, UMA delivers every ordered gaming pod once a month. Although the products have arrived in our zone today, it might take 1 or 2 days. Or, it could even take an hour if we are lucky enough." Brian nodded his head while putting 2 big packets of ramen into the cart. Then, he walked toward the cookies section and vegetable section. He also visits bottle nutrient section. It is a place where bottles filled with nutrient juice are kept. He picked up nearly 15 bottles and went to another corner. After 20 minutes, his shopping spree ends. He walks up to the counter together with James while they discuss New Gods. "Bro, I heard the New Gods will soon release Mega Dungeon where even players less than level 20 and more than level 10 can enter. I will choose the warrior class with barbarian race and try to level up as soon as possible. What about you? What class and race are you going to choose?" James excitedly explained his plan while asking for Brain's idea. "I am still not sure. I heard they will add a new class and a race at noon update. I might change my mind if those new updates are good. By the way, I suggest you choose Giant Race with Warrior class. Unless you are going for Berserker, you don't need to choose Barbarian Race. Of course, Stone Race isn't bad either. But, they are more inclined towards defense and have fewer chances for leveling up as you want." Brian swiped his credit card and walks away with the bags while speaking to James. You are right. I should definitely think more about this. Heck. I am not even sure if I am going to choose warrior class. I heard there are more than 10 races and classes in the New Gods. Unfortunately, they don't have vampire or werewolves race. James nodded his head and sighed with regret. "Don't worry, just do your best in the game and improve your strength. Remember, New Gods is not our destination. It's just a path. Anyway, I need to catch the first train. Bye." Brian finally bids farewell to his old buddy. Don't worry. Call me whenever you are free to play as a group. Knowing his friend and his behavior, James didn't invite him immediately. Brian nodded his head and walked away. He reached the station, and luckily, the new train had just arrived. He hurriedly got inside and the train drove him to his apartment area. After walking out of the train, he heads straight toward his apartment. He basically knows very few people. Although he doesn't hate interacting with people, he basically enjoys staying alone. Taking an elevator, he heads to his apartment. But, just as he reached in front of his door, he saw a package but, it wasn't alone. There was a small girl sitting over the package. Did I order a girl? Pretty sure, I didn't. Who is she? Why is she sitting on my package? Brian walked towards his package while staring at the small girl. Hearing his footstep, the girl turned her head at him. Wow! When Brian sees her face, he falls into a deep illusion for a second. The red eyes, silver hair, a pale complexion, and a small mouth with red lips. The girl seems to be 7 or 8 years old. She stared at Brian and asks, "Are you, Brian Jackson?" Hearing her words, Brian immediately comes out of the illusion and nods his head. He found some similarities but he still doesn't believe in his own thoughts. His brain was literally shooting neurons giving him different viewpoints about her. Receiving his response, the little girl bows her head and says, "My name is Eleanor Bathory. From now on, I will be in your care, father." Ha! Thanks for reading my new story. If you like it, then add it to your library and support me with Power Stones. It will help me a lot. Chapter 2 Daddy Must Burn Those Magazines. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Alright. This is depressing. How am I supposed to react in this kind of situation? Brain looked at the little girl in front of him and mumbled while rubbing his head. He got the idea about this but suddenly a strange emotion arose in his eyes. A strange scene came to his mind as he remembered a middle-aged man kneeling in front of another man. When he remembered it, only then did he understand this emotion. It was guilt. Sometimes if you ignore things too much, then you will regret it. This was happening to him and only now he was slowly understanding why. He looked at her eyes for a moment and closed eyes. He dropped the groceries on the ground and slapped his forehead shouting, "You are supposed to take the pills after doing the deeds with a stranger." He didn't even need to think twice. Just those eyes were enough to tell him who this girl belonged. But, he thought that lady would have taken the pills. He didn't expect her to bear the child and even raise her till she is. How old? Most of all, she didn't even tell him that he had a daughter for 8 years. He didn't get anything. Of course, if he hadn't ignored some things, he would have realized it a long ago, but now he felt guilty for ignoring things that he shouldn't have. He couldn't help but give her another glance and assumed her age in his mind. But, then he remembered he could do that with another method as well. After all, he can't forget that night no matter how hard he tries. He looked at her and thought for a moment. He had a lot of questions but he decided to be as simple as he could. So, he asked, "I do get the feeling that you are her daughter, but why didn't I know about this before? And, why did you come here now?" Eleanor touched her cheek with her finger and spoke, "I always wanted to meet Daddy. But, Mother didn't allow me. Teehee. So, I sneaked out when she isolated herself in a room for a breakthrough." Pat. Brian couldn't help but smack his head and asked, "So, you sneaked out and your family just let you do it?" "Of course not, Daddy. I had to force them with the aura of my blood." "Hee hee. They are pretty weak in front of my blood." Eleanor giggled while putting her hand in front of her mouth. "Now, I finally understand why there were so many hickeys. Well, it made my guess true. She was a vampire and probably from the powerful family." Brian sighed and spoke, "I know you are excited to meet your father who hasn't even looked after you for 8 years, but seriously, you will bring me a lot of trouble." Once your mother finds out, she will not only come after me but she might kill me as well. You are an idiot, aren't you, Daddy? If she wanted to kill you, how could you live till now? Eleanor giggled, but her words were quite cold. She opened her arms and jumped into his embrace. 0. Anyway, I finally got to meet you, Daddy. Well, she isn't an innocent girl. But, at least, her words make sense. For a vampire, it wouldn't be hard to kill me. Well, maybe she didn't want to ruin her reputation by calling me husband, so we never met. I became a father, huh? Dad, I don't know if this is how you felt when you held me. Brian couldn't believe that he became a father out of nowhere. If only he hadn't ignored those things, he would have found out way earlier. But, he was still calm enough to accept it. Just when he thought that, Eleanor lifted his arms while shouting, "What are you doing, Daddy? You are supposed to embrace your daughter." Hearing her words, Brian slowly lifted his arm and placed it around her. Being held by her daddy, Eleanor was simply giggling. This is so sudden that I don't even know I am supposed to feel. For now, let's go inside the house. Yay! I wanted to see where Daddy slept. Let's go. Let's go. Eleanor held him by his neck with one arm while raising another arm to cheer him up. Brian sighed and held one of the grocery packets with his hand and walked up to the door. Lily, open the door. Creak. The door opened with a single beep sound coming out of it. Eleanor got curious about it and asked, "Daddy, if I am not wrong, you worked for UMA Technical Group for 2 years, right? Don't tell me you have already read about my whole history." Brian looked at her with surprise and asked. Humph. It's all the mother's fault. She said I should start learning everything just when I was 5. And, those lessons were really harsh. Heek. Heek. I don't ever want to go back. Eleanor bursts into tears while wrapping her arms around his neck tightly. Oh. All right. I am a normal human. So, can you remove your hand? Brian felt like Eleanor was choking him to death. He doesn't want to admit it, but even his 8-year-old daughter has a stronger body than him. Well, vampires are vampires. Superhuman strength and agility alongside their immense control over blood. I always get shocked that we stood out against them for so long. Maybe that's why she didn't want to form any ties with me. But then again, if I remembered it correctly, I didn't pass out before she did. Haha. Vampire or not, I am not going to lose to any race in the bed. But, then why would she have a baby with a stranger? She must have a reason, otherwise I can never believe it, especially after learning that she raised the child on her own. Brian had some doubts in his mind. After all, it was shrouded with mysteries, especially now that he knows she didn't take pills. He had been together with a few ladies while he was in high school. But, none of them bear his child. So, why her? Why vampire of all people? Not to mention, this incident happened just after he finished high school. This is so confusing. But on another hand, I got a daughter. So, I should be happy about it. But why can't I? Damn, why am I feeling so much guilt about this? It wasn't my fault. Whenever he thought of that, he kept remembering that same thing where a middle-aged man kneeled in front of another man holding a girl covered in blood, almost on the verge of death. Maybe that's just how a father would react. A father would never let a pride when it comes to saving his child. I might be feeling guilty because I couldn't take care of her. Damn. It's all her fault. She could have said to me that I have a father. He was still unwilling to admit that this was partially his fault as well. He took a deep breath, putting a smile on his face as he walked in. But just as they reached inside, Eleanor jumps down from his embrace. Daddy, I will explore my new home. Eleanor's new home mission number 1. Exploration. With that being her mission, she ran off. Brian chuckled seeing her childish innocence. He walked up to the kitchen and puts the groceries in the table. Then, he goes out and picks up other groceries. Finally, he also brings the big package inside, but he kept it near the door. Although he was excited to see new gods, he didn't open it. Rather, he walked up to the kitchen and started putting things in place. Just when he was putting the eggs, he suddenly heard Eleanor's words. "Daddy, why did you hide a bunch of magazines under the bed?" Oh, sh*t. Brian knew he had made a big mistake. The package of eggs fell from his hand as he dashed toward his room. He saw Eleanor getting under the bed. He pulled her out immediately and made a serious expression. "You will not touch those, understand?" His expression was really scary. Seeing his face, Eleanor slowly bursts into tears. "Daddy's scary. Eleanor is scared. Scary daddy shoe." Oh, **t. Brian immediately realized his mistake and pulled her into his embrace. He patted her head and started consoling. "Daddy is sorry about that, dear. Daddy promises that he will never make that face again. Please forgive Daddy and stop crying. Otherwise my cute daughter will look ugly." Humph. Eleanor is not ugly. She is the cutest girl in the world. Only when he apologized, did Eleanor stop crying and pouting. Damn, so cute. Brian wanted to squeeze her in his arms, but then he remembers her godly strength and decided not to. He sneaked a peek at his bed and thought, I should definitely burn those **n magazines. First, I need to distract her. "Eleanor, can you help Daddy with something?" Eleanor shook her head and denied it. But, why? Brian couldn't understand why she denied it. "I do not want Daddy to call me by my name. Give me a nickname." Eleanor pouted and looked away. "Are you a pet?" Brian asked while rolling his eyes. "Then, how about Cutie?" "Too boring. You should call Mom by that nickname." Eleanor declined, so Brian had no choice but to continue. "Honey. I am not sweet and I don't want anyone to lick me." "Dear. Too plain." "Daughter. That's what I am." "How about Ely?" When he said that, Eleanor turned at him with a big surprise on her small face. But, she quickly folded her hands and hummed, "It's not bad, but I want a different name." Hearing her words, Brian suddenly realized something and smiled. "Isn't it better if your daddy and mommy call you by the same nickname?" He was surprised that her mother also thought of the same nickname. For some reason, it made him happy. Eleanor stiffly moved her head and pouted, "Only you two." "Hee hee. That's my Ely. Now, can you help me with something?" Brian patted her head and asked. "Yes, what is it, Daddy?" Eleanor giggled after getting his pats and asked. "Can you bring that big package to that empty room over there with your superhuman strength?" Brian asked. "Easy, but Daddy, you need to be stronger. Mother is super strong." Eleanor jumped from his embrace and giggled while running towards the package. Instead of dragging it, she simply lifted it and walked towards the empty room which was near the kitchen. Target has entered the spot. When she entered the room, a voice rang in Brian's mind, which was his own voice. He held a box in his hand and looked at another hand. "Lighter ready. Now, run." Whoosh. In less than 10 seconds, Brian ran out of his home and went into the backyard. He walked up to the cemented base and puts his box. Then, he lit up the fire and burned the box. My 5 years of hard work. Goodbye. It's time for this Brian to raise a daughter. Comment down below to let me know whether you like the progress or not. And, vote with power stones. Chapter 3 Daddy, can you help me bath? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hee hee hee. Daddy really thinks I couldn't see those. But, Mother did say that I shouldn't read those until I reach 18, but also forces me to learn everything from the internet. Did she forget that the internet is the most impure place for the kids? Eleanor looked out of the window and saw her father burning those magazines and giggled. Then, she turned around and looked at the big package. I am not even 18, which means I can't play this game. But, I can't stop Daddy from playing this game. If he doesn't get stronger, then our family will never be able to live together. Yes, Daddy must get stronger. She clenched her fists with determination and walked out of the room with a strong sense of motivation. But, just as she walked out, Brian walked in. He was sweating a little. When he opened the door and entered, he was simply dazzling with his appearance and body built. No. I want to spend more time with Daddy. Seeing his appearance, Eleanor's determination faded like the gas as she dashed toward her father. Wait, Ely. Your father is full of sweat. I will take a quick bath. Seeing his daughter running towards him, Brian stopped her and decided to take a bath. Yes, she also wanted to hold his daughter, but all that insane running made him sweat. So, he wanted to clean himself. Humph. Hearing his rejection, Eleanor stomped her foot on the ground and walked away with an angry expression. Brian couldn't help but chuckle seeing her cuteness. He took changing clothes and walked toward the bathroom. Now that his daughter was here, he can't walk around in his underwear. But, just when he entered the bathroom, a question came to his mind. Why does she like me so much? I haven't done anything for her. I am not even worthy to call myself a father. But, that pure innocence and love, am I really worthy to get it? Creak. Bam. Daddy, please help me take a bath. Suddenly, the door opened and the little girl walked in and shouted. At this moment, Brian was in his underwear. His mind went blank for a moment. But, for some reason, he didn't feel anything. He sighed and asked, didn't she teach you to take a bath alone? Humph. I am just 8. Am I not supposed to be washed by my own father? And, she never washed me once from the time I can remember. She is a bad mother. Eleanor stomped her foot on the ground. What? How could she? Brian got angry when he heard that her own mother didn't wash her daughter even once. As a mother, how could you not bathe your own child? He started fuming with rage. Oh. Ely, Daddy will wash you, but you will grow and you need to learn how to bathe. Brian took a deep breath and calmed down. He had no experience to wash someone, but he was still willing to do it, especially when the person was his daughter. He allowed her inside and washed her, then sends her out. Only then, did he lock the door and washed. After the bath, Eleanor touched a bracelet in her hand and a few clothes popped out. Suddenly, a smile appeared on her lips as she put those clothes back and rushed to the bathroom. Daddy, I don't have spare clothes. What should I wear? Oh yeah. You didn't bring anything with you. Just wear your previous clothes for now. We can go out shopping after I finish this. Brian spoke out loud from the bathroom. Hee hee. Eleanor giggled as she started wearing her previous clothes. She wore a red frock that covered her entire body. She was extremely excited to go out with her father. From the moment of her birth, she never got a chance to go out. Everything she wanted was delivered in her footstep. She had everything but also had nothing. Only when she started realizing that she can't be born without a father, did she start searching for him. At first, it was a tough task since she couldn't ask anyone. And, her mother won't tell her. But, her mother made one stupid mistake. When she was 7, her mother gave her the task of further understanding the world with the internet. Oh, basically, she took 3 months to learn various things. She found different cultures. She found different people and races. And, she even found that she could track every single person through the internet unless they live in the woods. So, she spent the next 3 months learning to code. Because of her bloodline, she had insane memory capabilities and some inherited intelligence. So, after 3 months of learning, she started hacking into many tracking systems. Although she didn't know much about her father, she knew he was a human. After all, every person in her family calls her half-blood. Though for some reason, her half-blood is even stronger than her mother's pure blood. If not for her mother's pure strength, nobody could stand a chance against her, especially within that family. So, she hacked into the government to track the DNA that matches her. Surprisingly, she didn't find anything about him. She didn't find a person that matches her DNA. So, she hesitated for a while but finally decided to hack into UMA. It did cause her a problem. Although she managed to hack in, they also managed to find her. Just when she thought she was caught, her mother entered the isolation for the breakthrough. And, with her blood powers, she dominated other people to lie to the UMA officers. After paying a certain fine, UMA left and she got her hands on her father's identity. Brian Jackson is an extremely talented programmer. When he was 20, his parents died at the hands of vampires. This was enough to shake her. But, the further she read, the more surprised she got. Brian didn't have any hatred against vampires and even helped the vampires in a few cases. After his graduation, he instantly got the position of the top programmer at UMA, which is also why he got forced to help vampires in some situations. This gave her hope. But, the hope was once again broken because Brian left UMA in order to enter it as a martial artist rather than a programmer who handles technical stuff. It was 2 years ago. Now, he is living in Zone B as a normal human being. Yes, her father was a completely normal human being. But, the hope hadn't been extinguished yet. Because just when he left, his final project was none other than New Gods. He had made a major contribution to the creation of New Gods. The game was launched 2 years ago but it still had many issues, which is why Brian waited for 2 whole years. The immersive virtual reality wasn't perfect, transferring strength to the real body wasn't perfect, the person can't run his livelihood until he can make money by playing games all the time. That version was just a beta. And, it wasn't just for a few people. New Gods targeted nearly 80% of humans who didn't get a chance to awaken any supernatural abilities. And, even people who have awakened supernatural abilities but of a low level. Creak. Bedodem, so, you are ready. Brian opened the door as he walked out while rubbing his wet hair with the towel. He was wearing a black t-shirt and black track pants. So cool. Seeing her dad walking out of the bath while drying his hair was too much for her. Brian doesn't consider himself extremely attractive but he wasn't bad either. Although he wasn't this fit before, he was still pretty good looking. But now, he was on a whole different level, especially after he made this new body. His charm had exploded. Daddy, let's go. Eleanor jumped into his embrace, making him stumble a little. All right. All right. Brian sighed and walked out while holding his daughter in his hand. But, before going out, he puts his towel outside for drying. He slightly made his hair and finally left the house with his phone. As he walked out, a voice suddenly stopped. Mr. Brian, is she your daughter? Wait, you had a daughter all this time. Brian turned around and saw a lady standing behind him. She had little ears in her head but her tail had already disappeared. She was wearing a skirt and a coat outside her purple shirt. She was beautiful, to say the least. How did you know, Miss Charlotte? Brian was confused. After all, he didn't even see her in front of him. Sorry, I saw you while you were walking out. Her face is extremely similar to yours except for the eyes and hair. But, I got confused since I thought you were single all this time. Charlotte explained as she looked at both of them one more time. While she was analyzing little Ely, she was also getting analyzed by little Ely. This woman. There is some frustration and anger in her eyes. It means she is an enemy. Unlike Brian, Eleanor could see her emotions easily. Seeing those frustrated eyes, Eleanor instantly put Charlotte on her top enemy list. She wasn't going to let any woman enter her family. Unfortunately, Brian was impressed by her ability. He couldn't help but look at Eleanor once again. Even he didn't find her similar to himself. He looked at Charlotte and nodded his head. Some stuff happened. Do you like this book? If yes, then vote with power stones to support me. Chapter 4. Somebody has couple coupon for daddy and it's not mommy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Of course, some stuff has to happen. How can you have a daughter when it doesn't happen? Charlotte was speechless upon his reply. She rolled her eyes and asked, I mean, why didn't you tell us before? And, why didn't I see her before? Lady, it's my daddy. It's our family business. Why are you trying to stick your nose? Eleanor got annoyed by her question and rebuked with a harsh and cold tone. At the same time, she released intense pressure on her body. Because of her early training, she had complete control over her aura. And, so, Brian didn't even find any changes. But, Charlotte faced an immense mountain putting her down. Ely, that's not how you should talk to your dad's friend. Say sorry to Miss Charlotte. But, immediately that pressure went down when Brian scolded her, forcing her to apologize. Eleanor made teary eyes as she looked at her father, but he had a strict face. She got no choice but to apologize. I'm sorry. It's okay. She is just a child raised in a high-class family after all. Charlotte had a smug on her face. In her mind, neurons were firing up. She was deducing everything as if her mind was a superbrain. That pressure. I can never forget it. It belongs to those blood-sucking leeches. And, she is just a child. That means her bloodline is at least emperor grade or else, it wouldn't have such pressure. Mr. Brian is a completely regular human. That means her mother must be someone from a high aristocracy vampire family. Since I haven't seen her with Mr. Brian, it means she doesn't want to be called his wife or at least, doesn't want to be with him. And, it is understandable. Mr. Brian shouldn't have any experience with children. Using her, I can get closer to him and once she is called back, I can finally confess and marry him. Hee hee. I am such a genius. Those 4 years of hard work in psychology wasn't all for nothing. 0. Wow, you can tell. Brian was impressed by Charlotte. After all, Ely's words weren't that arrogant. She was just angry. But, somehow, Charlotte was able to guess that Ely was from an aristocratic family. Of course, Mr. Brian. Did you forget we went to the same university and I studied psychology? But, isn't this troublesome for you? I mean, if her mother finds out that she has snuck out to meet you, it would create trouble for you. Charlotte proudly stuck out her chest and rubbed her nose. But, some concern grew in her eyes as she asked. Brian helplessly smiled and looked at Eleanor. He patted his daughter's head, making her confused. I do feel afraid. I mean, she is on the top of the world while I am at the bottom. I am not strong. I am not rich. And, I don't have any background. But, knowing all that, I can't just ask my daughter to leave when she took such a great effort and risk to meet her unworthy father. Slowly, he turned his head at Charlotte and continued, I don't care if this is going to bring me a catastrophe. If my daughter wants to stay with me, I will do everything in my ability to make that happen. For a moment, a lightning bolt struck Eleanor and Charlotte. Both of their eyes widened as they looked at him and a single thought came to their mind. So freaking cool. Pat. Suddenly, Charlotte slapped her face with both of her hands and freaked out. Oh my God. Oh, my beast ancestor. Why? Why is he so cool? Even during his college days, he was always cool, calm, and charming. And, now, his charm has risen over the mountain. I love him. I love him. I love him. Oh. On another side, Eleanor had a gone maid as well. Why? Why are you so cool, Daddy? No, no, if this continues, more and more women will get attracted. I won't let that happen. But, Daddy, I love you, even more, when you look so cool. This is not fair. This is not fair. Oh, what happened to you two? Wait, was I too arrogant? I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be arrogant. Please don't mind my words. Brian couldn't understand why they were having such a drastic change in expression. He wanted to find out, but he was a programmer, not a psychologist. No, no, you weren't arrogant, Mr. Brian. You were cool. Anyway, are you going off somewhere? Charlotte noticed the change in his expression and instantly changed the topic. She couldn't bear to see her charming prince in guilt. She thinks I am cool. Brian was startled when she called him cool. Although he felt he was above average, cool wasn't the exact word he thought he would get. But, this made him a little happy. He smiled and replied, yes, my daughter didn't bring any clothes, so we are going to the mall for a little shopping. Though I am not sure if I can find a suitable dress for her. I am just a plain guy who likes wearing black. No, you are not plain, Dad/Mr. Brian. You are cool. When he called himself plain, Charlotte and Eleanor burst out. You think so? Anyway, I wonder if you are busy, Miss Charlotte. Brian got a little embarrassed. He rubbed his head and asked. No, no, I am completely free. I will always be free for you. These were her inner thoughts. Charlotte was expecting him to call her for the shopping. She could read his mood a little bit. She adjusted her excitement and continued. And, Mr. Brian, please call me Charlotte. It sounds distant when you call me Mississippi. Then, you have to call me Brian. Would you like to help me with the shopping? I don't think I can choose better dresses for her. Of course, if you are free to do so. Brian replied with a calm smile on his face. Charlotte should be able to understand Ely's desire to clothe with her knowledge about human/vampire/multi-racial psychology. And, I also need to find someone who can help me take care of Ely while I play. If she agrees, I can focus more on gaining my strength. Brian was secretly scheming in his mind. But, he doesn't know that Charlotte will agree to his request if he just says that out loud. He is totally underestimating his charm. Of course, I will be glad to accompany you. And, I also had to buy some clothes for myself. So, you have to help me choose whether it looks good on me or not. Charlotte didn't let this opportunity slide. She immediately binds him into her palm. Daddy! Suddenly, Eleanor screamed from his embrace. Brian looked at her with confusion and asked what happened, Ely. Although he said that in a simple way, his words made her heart melt. The words that were in her mind couldn't come out of her mouth. Instead, some other words come out of her mouth. Don't ignore your daughter. Ha ha ha. How can I ignore my daughter? I was just asking Charlotte for help. By the way, what should she call you? I think Sister Charlotte would be a better choice. When he just suggested that, Charlotte looked at Brian with surprise. In her eyes, Brian was a dense guy who doesn't understand romantic things properly. So, she thought he would ask his daughter to call her Aunt Charlotte. But, that would make her sound old. Even so, she didn't think she could go against his words. So, she was genuinely surprised upon hearing that. All right. Just like her, Eleanor wasn't immune to his words either. She grumpily answered and looked away. Please don't mind her. How about we leave now? Brian sighed at his daughter's grumpy attitude towards Charlotte and decided to leave. Charlotte nodded her head and walked near him. She walked to his side, almost making herself his wife. Wait. Wife. Wait, don't I have that? Suddenly when she viewed herself as his wife, something came to her mind. She instantly turned her head at Brian and said, please wait a minute. Whoosh. The next moment, she dashed towards her room. Her room was near his room. They were neighbors. Brian looked at her with confusion while Charlotte entered her messy room and started throwing away clothes. Where is it? Where did I keep it? Don't tell me I throw it away. No, I don't think I threw it away. It must be here somewhere. Where is that coupon? She completely changed the structure of her entire room just to find a single coupon only to realize that she had kept it inside her wardrobe's secret room. There is it. How silly of me. Taking the coupon, she realized she put it there in case she could get a chance to go shopping with Brian. And, this was a perfect chance. She instantly went out of the room and locked the door. Brian, look what I've. We can do a lot of shopping with this. She dashed towards Brian while swinging her hand. Brian was confused by her actions. She reached in front of him and panted. Who? Who? Read it. Brian took the coupon and read with wide eyes. 50% discount, wait. Couple coupon. Do you enjoy this series? If yes, then vote with Power Stones. Chapter 5 Daddy asked someone to live with him and it's not mommy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Are you sure it would be okay? This could be detrimental to your status. Brian didn't know how to respond to that coupon. It was a couple of coupons for God's sake. And, you have to act like a couple to the point where they could even send you to change clothes in a single changing room. It doesn't matter much to him but he didn't want to trouble Charlotte. Of course, it is okay. Otherwise, why would I bring it to you? And, don't worry about my status. I am already 20.5 with no boyfriend. My peers are already engaged. Slowly, Charlotte turned shy and continued, this could help me a little. No. Before Brian could say anything, Eleanor roared. Her immense rage burst out in the form of her aura. It was so strong that it slammed Charlotte to her knees, but only then did Eleanor realize she didn't control her aura. She freaked out for a moment but then, she got confused. Brian was just standing there as if nothing happened to him, looking at her with an angry expression. What is the meaning of this, Ely? He knew Ely was a spoiled brat. After all, she was living in an aristocratic family but he didn't expect her to be so rude and press Charlotte on her knees. At this moment, he was truly angry at her. Seeing those angry eyes, Eleanor bursts into tears and apologized, Zero. I'm sorry, father. If his anger was her spot point, then her tears were his spot point. He couldn't see the tears in those eyes. But, he knew he can't simply ignore what she has just done. He puts her down, which made her cry even more, and walked up to Charlotte. Are you alright? Dump. When he crouched down on his knee and asked with a smile on his face, her heartbeat skipped. It beat so loud that even Brian could hear it. Are you alright? Is everything okay? Hearing that sound from her heart, a trace of panic appeared in his eyes. He hurriedly asked with tension in his mind. I'm fine. That was nothing. I am a werewolf, remember? Seeing those eyes filled with panic, Charlotte instantly stood up, and even though she was bleeding a little from her knees, she completely ignored it. No, you are not fine. You are bleeding here. Although she ignored it, Brian simply couldn't ignore it. As soon as he found the bleeding, he panicked a little. Oh. Don't sweat it. It will be healed in a few seconds. Look, it's already healed. You are still underestimating me. I am a rank 4th ranker. This kind of wound is nothing to me. Charlotte felt guilty seeing him in panic. She cursed her own wound, hoping that her regeneration ability will heal her quickly. She poured all of her willpower and healed her wound in just a few seconds. Only after seeing her wound healed, did Brian calm down. He still needs her support. After all, if he wants to focus on new gods, he must ask her to take care of Eleanor. That's why he wanted to turn the good relationship between them into a great one. Thank God. I was worried. My daughter seems to be spoiled a lot. I apologize for her. Brian bowed his head slightly as he apologized while Eleanor clenched her fist. She had already stopped crying. She didn't expect to put him through so much trouble. Daddy, I'm sorry. I promise I will not do it again. Please forgive me. Eleanor felt guilt for making his bow. She immediately ran near him, pulled his pants, and apologized. Please don't apologize. As I said, she is just a child. She doesn't know many things. And she is not at fault. After all, children are innocent. It depends on whom she grew up with. If she had grown up with you or me, she wouldn't be this spoiled. So, no need to blame yourself. If you blame yourself, I will feel guilty as well. Anyway, we have to go, don't we? We will be late otherwise. Charlotte immediately raised his head and shook her head while explaining. She puts all of the blame on Eleanor's mother. Brian sighed. Although he didn't want Ellie's mother to feel guilty, he still thinks this is her fault. After all, Charlotte is right. Children are innocent. He turned his head down and said, from now on, you will never ever hurt anyone with your powers unless they want to hurt you, promise me. If you break your promise, I will never talk to you. Hearing his words, Eleanor clenched his small fists. Few drops of tears appeared in her big eyes. Finally, she nodded her head. All right. As for your punishment, I will not hold you in my arms. Rather, you will hold my and Charlotte's hand while we go the shopping. Brian sighed after seeing her nod. He puts his hand on her hand and held it. On another side, Charlotte wasn't sure to hold her hand. So, Brian took a step forward and said, aren't you going to hold Sister Charlotte's hand? Hearing her father's command, she had no choice but to hold her hands. Charlotte also smiled and held her tight. After that, they finally left for the mall. It was only 20 minutes' journey on the train. But, 3 different kinds of emotions were bursting out of the single group during the entire journey. Charlotte was giggling, laughing, and had smiled all the time. Brian had an awkward expression throughout the journey. And, Eleanor was trembling with anger because every person who saw them walking called them the perfect couple. Soon, they reached the mall. It was quite big and they had to find a specific shop because they couldn't get the benefits of couple coupon in any other shop. Brian was anxious since he didn't know whether to call Charlotte his wife or not. And, he was afraid that Eleanor will call her sister Charlotte as well. But, as soon as they reached the receptionist, they were greeted with a kind smile. Hello sir, madam. Hello there, little girl. The receptionist was a girl who was quite enthusiastic and also lovely. Hello there. We are here for our daughter's dress. Can you show us some dresses that would suit our daughter? Just as they planned on the train, Charlotte took a step forward and started the conversation. Oh yes, please. Would you like to leave her in our hands? You too can shop for yourself while we will select the dress your daughter likes. The receptionist smiled and asked. Ah. No, please. We would like to pick a dress for our daughter. If you don't mind, can you show us the way where children's clothes are kept? Brian intercepted with a rejection which made the receptionist a little sad, but she quickly resumed her smile and showed them the way. After that, they started selecting dresses for Eleanor. It wasn't hard since almost every dress looked cool on her. From vest, skirt, frock, sweat jacket, sweater, hoodies, crochet, every dress looked just better on her. But, at this end, she liked a black frock with white socks. It looked amazing on her. But, Brian didn't approve of it. It looked more like a maid dress. And, he went against this idea. But, Eleanor just didn't quit until she got this as well. Finally, they went to select some dresses for Charlotte. Just like Eleanor, she was also great in every dress. Whether it was jeans, tight pants, skirts, frocks, or even maid dress. Brian didn't understand why she chose maid dress. But, it looked amazing on her. He couldn't put his eyes away when she wore that. For Charlotte, he couldn't force anything, so he kept his mouth shut. Finally, he also got himself a few clothes. This time he tried some other clothes as well. From green track pants to a yellow full-sleeve T-shirt, full navy blue formal pants and coat, white shirt, and black pants, he tried a lot of dresses as well. Finally, they moved out with dozens of bags full of clothes. Oh, at this moment, Brian had no choice but to put Ely on his shoulder. The receptionists and others didn't even try to confirm their relationship. They just gave them a discount, fully trusting their relationship. This trust was so great that Brian started feeling guilty. After they left the mall and returned back to their apartment building, Brian couldn't help but mutter, "I feel bad for lying to others." "I don't think so." Charlotte shook her head and her face turned red. Seeing us together, talking and laughing put a smile on the many people's faces. Even though it was fake, it meant that we would be perfect together. When she said that, Eleanor widened her eyes, but this time, her pressure didn't come out. But, she glared so hard that if gaze could kill, Charlotte would have died many times. Brian hesitated for a moment. He poured a lot of courage into his heart and asked, "Charlotte, you work from home, right?" Yes, Charlotte nodded her head and felt like Brian wanted to ask something. But, Brian was twitching a lot. He was hesitating a lot. He rubbed his fist a few times until he bowed slightly and shouted, "Charlotte, would you please live together with me in my house? If you are enjoying this book, then consider voting Power Stones. The higher number we reach, the more chapters one can release." Chapter 6 Daddy Doesn't Love Mommy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I know it is extremely rude and shameless of me. But, I am joining New God soon. Once I am inside the game, I won't be able to look after Ely. Before I didn't think of this, but now as a father, I need to think about her. The quest system of the game can be harsh and long. Sometimes I might not be able to come out on time. Eleanor might have strength, but she has lived in an aristocratic family. You and I both know how bad the children of those families are at daily activities. You can totally deny it. I just wanted to test my chance. I guess this is like a confession to a girl who is always at the top of the class in beauty, intelligence, and background. Even though we know we will get rejected, we still try, right? Brian bites his lips and confessed. Confession. Confession. With those words reaching her ears, a lightning bolt struck her. Charlotte suddenly felt the darkness in front of her eyes. But, slowly, the sun was rising in front of her. The sun had the image of Brian, which was illuminating the darkness around her. Thud. She fell to her knees with tears sliding down her cheeks. Seeing her crying, Brian panicked. He bowed even more and shouted, "I'm sorry. Please forgive me for asking something so stupid. I am really stupid. I just wanted to put more time into New Gods. I thought if someone could take care of her, I don't have to come out of game, time and time again. That was so selfish of me. I am sorry. Please don't cry. You don't have agreed. No, I should slap myself for asking something so stupid. I was stupid to ask you to live in my house without even marrying you. I am sorry. No, she will live with you us. Eleanor and Charlotte shouted in unison. Both of them looked at each other with surprise, but with their eyes, they started communicating with each other. 0. You must live with us. Don't worry, I always wanted to live with him. Humph. Even though I give you the permission to live with me, I will keep an eye on you. Hee hee. If you dare to make trouble, I will complain to your daddy. If you dare to do anything funny, I will ask Mom to assassinate you. But, if you talk to your mom, she will take you back. So, either you listen to me or you are going home. The fierce battle of mind words was completely out of Brian's head. He didn't even know such a thing ever existed. He was just happy with Charlotte agreeing to his selfish request. He finally plays new gods without any worries. So, I will help you move your things here. Since I am going to use a gaming pod to sleep during the night, you can use my bedroom. Even if I play a lot, I will try to make time during the day. Brian awkwardly spoke while trying his best to act normal. I am a werewolf, you know. I can do that on my own. And, Charlotte shook her head and denied it. But, then, she lowered her head and blushed, continuing, I can cook delicious food. Oh. I already know that when you used to bring me bento. Anyway, I will get going for now. Brian was feeling really awkward. He grabbed the bags and ran off with Ely. Behind him, Charlotte clenched her fist and thought, from today, I will be living the dream of life. Brian, I will definitely make you fall in love with me. Charlotte was a werewolf who lost her family during the vampires' invasion of Zone B. Just like Brian, she was also living her life alone, but for her, it was also a new opportunity to find a new friend. Because of their same fate, Brian and Charlotte became friends quickly. But, before Charlotte knew it, she was already developing feelings for Brian. She was afraid of breaking her friendship with him, so she decided to create a strange mental barrier between them. This degraded their relationships with friends to classmates. To the point where both of them started addressing each other as Mr. and Miss. But, Charlotte wasn't worried. Because Brian didn't have a single interest in making girlfriends. For 5 years, he stayed single. So, she knew she had a chance if she just wait for the right opportunity. And, although they weren't close friends, she has always talked to him unlike most of his classmates. Now, an opportunity came as well. Although it came like devastating news for her, she was clever enough to understand that opportunity was lying beneath the bad news. But, there was a big problem. And, this is the same problem that had reassured her for 5 years. Brian is pretty dense. His dense behavior makes it harder even for her to penetrate his heart. So, she knew she must come up with some good planning. He wasn't that dense before high school, but after that, he changed. She makes some great resolutions in her mind and walked off to her room. On another side, Brian was fully flustered. This was the first time he had ever asked a girl to stay in his house. He didn't even bring his girlfriend when he was in high school. Maybe it was because of his parents, but he has never asked a girl to come to his home. He hurriedly rushed to his room and started cleaning even though his apartment was completely clean. Father, can I ask you something? Eleanor walked inside his room and spoke. Yes, Ely. Brian kept cleaning while listening to her. Do you love Mom? But when she asked this question, his hand stopped moving. He took a deep breath and asked, do you want to hear a lie or a truth? Mommy said lying is bad. So, tell me the truth. Eleanor clenched her fist with a little bit of sadness in her eyes and spoke. No. I don't love her. But, I can love her. You are too small to understand this, but if she is willing to make some effort, then I might end up falling head over heels for her. But for now, I do not love her. Brian honestly replied. Oh. Listening to that reply was like getting heartbroken. Eleanor was almost on the verge of breaking into tears, but suddenly, Brian appeared in front of her and patted her head. Of course, I do not love her doesn't mean I do not love you. Although I don't have done any DNA tests, I can feel that connection with you. So, how can I not love my own daughter? And, didn't you say that you tracked me through a DNA test? I don't think anyone would go through such an effort to find me if it is not my own daughter. Sob. Sob. Dad, Mom really doesn't hate you. So, please don't hate her. Eleanor couldn't say that her mother loves him. because she didn't know whether she truly loves him or not. But she knew her mother doesn't hate him. After all, she has seen her mother's ruthlessness. If she would have even a little bit of hatred, she would have killed him. Ha ha ha. Don't worry about it. I will not hate her. How can I hate a person I don't even know? Anyway, let's not talk about her. You must be hungry. I will make ramen quickly. Brian patted his daughter's head and walked away. He didn't want to say that he will love her mother. After all, it might not be possible. And, he doesn't like making empty promises. So, he could only say change the topic. Eleanor wiped away her tears and forced a smile on her face as she chased her father shouting. I want miso flavor. Yes, yes. Brian started making ramen for 3 people. Just after a few minutes, Charlotte arrived. So, they had a meal together. After a meal, he helped Charlotte move her things inside his house. It seemed like Charlotte had a total intention of moving here. She brought all of her clothes, and all of her work-related items, and in just a few minutes, his apartment got full. So, he started sorting things out. He didn't want to leave a mess around. While he cleaned the entire apartment, Charlotte went to the kitchen and made dinner. It was already evening. She was quite a good cook. After eating dinner, Charlotte took a bath and went to his room with Eleanor while he went to the gaming/empty room. Finally, he took out a knife and started tearing the package. After he opened the package, he saw a massive circular pod inside it. The pod had a glass tube near the face but everywhere else was covered with metal. He connects the power cable to the socket. This socket had 2 connections, one was the main connection and another was a generator. If the main connection goes off, it could still run for a few days. He walks out of the room and returns with a few nutrient bottles. He touched the down part of the pod and a container opens up. He puts the nutrient bottles. Inside the container, there were sharp straws that makes holes in the lid and keeps transferring the nutrient to his body. Finally, he closed the door properly and took off his clothes, leaving on his underwear. He opens the main door and enters the pod. After closing the door, he presses a small silver button on the side. Scanning retina. Scanning DNA. Scanning heartbeat. Mr. Brian, are you ready to enter the world of new gods? When those words rang in his mind, Brian curls his lips. Yes. Did you click on vote? If you haven't then, you should. Chapter 7 Daddy has dragon fetish. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Connecting. To the new gods, connection established. Slowly, he closes his eyes and his consciousness drifted inside an empty white room. It was almost the same as most morps he has played before. Creak. Suddenly, the door in front of him opened. A beautiful lady walked in. When he designed this game, he was given the task to create a guide who helps players to create the character. Naturally, he went with a beautiful goddess that he could imagine. Hello player, would you like to introduce yourself? The goddess smiled at him and asked. My name is Brian, though I would like to go with Savage Dragon. Brian nodded his head and introduced himself. Oh my. That's a unique nickname. Unfortunately, it has already been taken. Would you like to choose another one? The goddess made with surprise and giggled. Brian thought for a moment and said, how about Foolish Dragon? Sorry, it already has been taken. The goddess expressed her feelings of disappointment. Who is so foolish to use Foolish Dragon? Brian couldn't help but curse. 0. You. The goddess rolled her eyes and spoke. How about you try something unique? Take your time. How about Heavenly Dragon? Brian thought for a moment and asked. How about you think of something else than a dragon? It already has been taken. The goddess sighed and suggested him. She believed that Brian had some kind of obsession with the dragon which he had. He loves dragons and he always dreamed of riding on the back of a dragon. Sigh. How about mortal dragon then? Brian wasn't willing to let go of his dream that easily. Sorry, but it already has been taken. The goddess apologized with a tired expression. Damn. Enough is enough. How about Dragon Rider 97? Brian stomped his foot and shouted. Ah. That name hasn't been taken. But, are you sure you want to choose such a name? The goddess was surprised when she heard the name. Her eyes instantly flashed millions of names but none of them matched this name. Yes. Keep it. Brian released an extremely bloodthirsty aura as he spoke. He wanted this name. Nobody was allowed to take it from him. All right. The goddess also noticed his thirst for keeping this name and nodded. The next moment, she swiped her hand and dozens of virtual figures appeared in front of him. Oh. The first was human. It was just like a normal human wearing brown clothes of the medieval age. The second was a short dwarf. It was just like a normal dwarf, short with a massive beard. The third was a tall elf. It was a sexy elf, with thin and long legs, and perfect size breasts. The fourth was a human but a little shorter. It had a buffed body with a huge grin on its face. It was a barbarian. The fifth was tall. Giant. Like normal giants, he wasn't just tall but also more massive than a barbarian. The sixth was a unique race. It had 2 black horns on its head and looked more like a human. This was demon race. The seventh was interesting. It was a human but with golden wings behind him. Yes, it was an angel. These 7 races were the most common race with different abilities and attributes. Humans were most balanced as usual. Dwarfs had a lot of endurance and stamina with some innate abilities of a blacksmith. The elves were good with agility and intelligence. They also had some innate abilities for archery class. Then, there was a barbarian. This was another common race for those who loved tanking attacks. They also have high endurance and stamina with extra defense overall. Giants were king of tanks. They were way above barbarians and dwarfs for endurance and stamina. They also had additional stats in strength but they had very low agility. They can only use 1 attack until a balanced human can launch 3 attacks. Demon race was balanced with endurance, stamina, strength, and defense. The problem comes with their inability to access some major dungeons, visit some major cities, and even get quests from normal people. Finally, the angels were completely opposite. Their endurance, stamina, strength, the defense was quite low, even lower than humans. But, they can easily get quests with their immense charm. They can easily walk around any place without restriction and they are blessed when it is near the church. There were other races as well such as stone race but he didn't care about them. Brian simply chose human race. Although other races have certain abilities and attributes, it will be all for naught if you have something that will keep dragging you. Of course, he hadn't forgotten about the new class and new race that was going to be introduced today. But, it turns out that race was Damper. A race born out of humans and a vampire just like Eleanor. He didn't choose this race because the disadvantage is obvious. He wouldn't be able to walk in sun. He would have to live by consuming blood. He will be dictated by the vampires. But, when he thought about the third point, it confused him. Because even his daughter is a half-blood vampire. But, her bloodline is actually strong enough to push the full-blooded rank 4th werewolf to the ground. This made him doubt whether she was really his daughter but later learning that she found him through his DNA, he didn't doubt her. Eleanor was smart but she was also innocent. But even so, he had no reason to choose Damper as his race. So, his obvious choice would be human. The most balanced race of all. As for the class, he already had something in his mind. So, you have chosen human race. Well, what about the class? The goddess smiled at his choice and revealed a new virtual projection of different classes. Oh, warrior class, bandit class, assassin class, samurai class, mage class, monk class, healer class, ranger class, necromancer class, paladin class, shaman class, berserker class, poison master class, warlock class. There were varieties of classes in New Gods. But, he had already set his eyes on one specific class. He was happy that this class wasn't removed. In fact, he was the one who designed this class and wanted to be one of them. Holding the power of curses and dark magic, this class was known for its grim appearance. With uniqueness as obvious as slow poison and slow death, this class was always a doubt for the people when it comes to their own life to choose. But for him, this was a perfect class. Warlock. He instantly pressed the Warlock class. So, you chose the chaos who brings death and curses to this world. For some whose heart is as kind as yours, it seems quite contradictory. Are you sure you want to continue? The goddess asked with a solemn expression on her face. It was clear that she didn't like his choice. But, Brian was just surprised. You can see through my heart. Brian found this interesting because he didn't add this ability to her. Of course, I can. I am a goddess created to guide the mortal soul in their journey to godhood. So, I shall ask you again. Why are you trying to learn dark magic? You have a great hatred in your heart, so much so that if it was out, you would have been consumed by it. But, you are not letting it out. You are suppressing such a great hatred by yourself. So, why now? If you do something so foolish, you would bring chaos to yourself. The goddess spoke while pointing at his heart. Brian was shocked after hearing her words. It seems 0.point energy evolved her just like other monsters. I guess the main processor is working just fine. Brian smiled and thought. Then, he shook his head and said, that hatred is my hatred. This is my life. And, that is my decision. I shall choose Warlock class. Then, it shall be. Now, you need to select the town you want to go to. The goddess sighed and finally placed his class as a Warlock. I would like to go to the town of Asmir. Among many toes, Asmir was one of the best choices to go. It had a lot of dungeons, a lot of markets, and even something that he hoped is still there. After all, it has been 2 years since he left UMA. If they had changed this, it would risk his future plans with Warlock class. But, if it isn't changed, then, it would be just beautiful. Alright, your body shall be transferred to the Asmir after creation. The goddess placed both of her hands together and the white light covered his body. This was just a virtual projection, but after the light covered him, 2 different lights appeared in front of him. These were like spiral symbols. One was purple while another was green. The goddess closed her eyes and the green symbol moved towards the white light, striking him through it. After the green symbol struck him, his virtual body started condensing into a real human body. And, the next moment, a purple symbol struck him and his class was added to him. Finally, the white light slowly faded away alongside him. The goddess opened her eyes and looked at the ground with a gentle smile on her face. Farewell, my creator. I hope you will have a legendary journey in front of you. You have power stones. Use them by voting this book. Chapter 8 Mommy Loves Daddy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Creak. Daddy has entered the pod. I know. I can see that. Now, let's go back to bed and sleep. Humph. I wanted to sleep with Daddy. Teehee. Do you know if you sleep with your daddy, you will fight against your mommy? I will never fight with mommy. And, don't corrupt a child's mind. Alright. Alright. Let's get back to bed and sleep. If your daddy finds out her daughter is stalking him from the door, he will not play New Gods anymore. Arg. Why doesn't daddy has a bloodline? If he had a bloodline, he could have absorbed that energy through training alone. Creak. Thud. Slowly, the door got closed. Eleanor and Charlotte walked to their room. It was his room, but now it belongs to them. 0. By the way, when you released your pressure back then for the second, I noticed that you weren't controlling it. But, why didn't Brian got affected by it? Aren't you curious? And, you are supposed to be half-blood, why is your bloodline so strong? Charlotte asked as she started changing from her normal clothes to her nightgown. Don't call me half-blood. Eleanor glared at Charlotte and spoke. All right. All right, but we all know that if humans and vampires have a baby, it would be a half-blood species known as damper. But, you are not damper. I noticed it since you had no problem walking in the direct sunlight. Only vampires are supposed to have such powers. This made me doubt something. Are you really his daughter? Charlotte wasn't going to just accept anyone calling herself Brian's daughter. Of course, she would try to be logical with it. I already told you. Our DNA is matched. Look here. Eleanor clenched her fist and took out a phone from her bracelet and showed a picture that showed the DNA matched between her and Brian. Wait, you have spatial bracelet. Charlotte didn't look too much into the photo. Just one glance was enough to make her sad. But, she was instantly drawn to the bracelet because of its unique powers. Of course, I have. My mom is one of the strongest people in the world. She has a lot of these. Hee hee. You can never reach the strength of my mother. Daddy will never love you. Eleanor snickered with a proud and arrogant voice. Hearing her words, a trace of frustration and sadness appeared in Charlotte's eyes. She clenched her fists and lowered her head. Eleanor proudly raised her head, seeing such emotions in her eyes. But, the next moment, Charlotte raised her head with a smile and said. But, Brian loves doesn't her? If she had come with you, I would have stood no chance, but she is not here. The fact is now I am one step closer to making love with him. And, as long as I get through his dense mind, I can marry him. Oh. Hee hee. Then, you have to call me stepmother. Hee hee hee. Giggling like a maniac, Charlotte dashed towards the bed and wrapped his blanket. I would never call a pervert stepmother. Eleanor didn't understand how Charlotte got so much confidence in herself. But, she was indeed annoyed by her. But, she also got in the bed, next to her. She closed her eyes and suddenly felt two arms above her. Just when she tried to ask, Charlotte answered. You might hate me, but your daddy asked me to take care of you. And, I know you are missing his embrace. So, even if it isn't your daddy's embrace, it will keep you warm. Hearing her words, Eleanor couldn't refuse. When she fell in Charlotte's embrace, she really felt warm. This made her question herself, and she eventually asked. I will hate you even more if you become his wife. So, why? Because you are bearing the burden of your mother as a child, Charlotte replied. How did you know? Eleanor opened her eyes wide and asked. Didn't I tell you already? I studied psychology. A child who hasn't even seen her father can't show such a level of affection and attachment after a single day of the meeting. For Brian, it is his guilt for not taking care of you. But for you, it must be your mother's happiness. Well, that doesn't mean I am going to back down that easily. I will do everything in my power to steal his heart. So, let's sleep now. Her cheerful words made Eleanor even worse. She bites her small lips and said, my mother will kill you. Oh. Is that the reason why some of the girls who previously confessed to him disappeared? Well, she is vicious enough. Charlotte wasn't that surprised. If it was before, she would be surprised, but now, she found a lot of loopholes in this relationship. Through that, she had already made a theory of their relationships in her mind. My mom is not vicious. She just hates whenever other girls confess to him. I never thought Mom had such feelings for Dad. Humph. She didn't even tell her own daughter. I had to do everything on my own and even escape from that family. Eleanor pouted. Do you really think you would have got out so easily? I mean, do you really think she wouldn't notice your movements or your goals? You said your mother is one of the strongest people in the world, right? If you think your smartness can deceive such a person, then you are just a dumb brat. Charlotte spoke, but her voice was getting a little gloomy. Because till the shopping, she thought Eleanor's mother hates Brian. But now if her theory is correct, it would be messy, really messy for her. Suddenly, Eleanor raised her head from her embrace and looked at her with wide eyes. Oh, you mean she went to the isolation because she knew I succeed? She let me escape. Charlotte rolled her eyes and said, you are smart but you are inexperienced. Do you even know how high-class families proceed? Even though your mother is powerful, she doesn't have complete freedom. If my guess is correct, then she should have been forced to marry a high-class vampire from another family to show her existence to the world. Let me ask you something, does anyone except for your family knows your existence? I don't think so. Because damper can never have blood purer than vampires. You are logically damper but your bloodline is stronger than even your mother. I mean you suppressed me, the fourth-rank werewolf with your bloodline aura alone. So, they obviously want you to inherit the position of the vampire king/queen. But, if the words about you being the daughter of a human and a vampire gets out, even if you become strongest, you won't be able to inherit that position. First, your mother doesn't want to marry other vampires. It is frustrating to admit but she got the edge here if she still loves your dad. Second, she doesn't want you to engage in these politics. As long as you live with Brian, you will be free. After all, your mother can seal the mouths of those who know you. Third, she must plan to use you to get him back. Well, she can't come here and meet him. So, she indirectly sends you. Anyway, that's my theory. It could be completely wrong. Now, sleep. Saying so, she pulls Eleanor back into her embrace. Yes, now, I am curious about what you said earlier. I lost my emotions and released my aura exponentially. But, Dad wasn't affected at all. I had tested this before. It works on humans as well, but why didn't it work on Daddy? Eleanor mumbles while laying in her embrace. Well, I don't know. So, let's not think about it and sleep. Charlotte instantly closed the topic and closed her eyes. Inside New Gods, Brian was standing in front of a town. It was quite big, with lots of houses. The town was surrounded by bars and there were lots of people moving around. Lots of them were different in appearance, size, and even clothing. There were humans. There were elves as well. Some were dwarfs, demons, and barbarians while others were angels, stone race, and some damper as well. This was a beginner village so most of them were just beginners. The choice is purely subjective but it impacts a lot in their future. Humans normally choose classes like mage, monk, warriors, and assassins. If one chooses giant, they will obviously go for classes like guardian or warriors. Once you choose a race in New Gods, your real-life body also starts mutating into that race. Appearance won't change but that's how they will acquire the power. It's like getting the bloodline but instead, they change their genes. Because humans want to keep humans' appearance. They don't want people to turn into 50 feet tall giants in the middle of a street. So, they only change the genes based on race. And, once genes are changed, they can start acquiring abilities from the selected class. This is how future humans who aren't born with supernatural abilities can stand against other races. Ely. Readers, please give me lots of votes. Readers. 3 Power Stones voted, with serious expression on their face. Chapter 9 Daddy got his first quest. You are listening at novelfull.audio. My first goal is to get the elixir of dragon heart. If I remember it correctly, I put that elixir inside a hidden chamber of a flood dragon dungeon. If I get my hands on that elixir, I would be able to eliminate potential weaknesses of my class. By the way, I wonder how the status panel is. They shouldn't have changed it, right? Status. Brian mumbled while standing in front of the village and calls out for his status. With his call, a blue panel with black words appears in front of him. Name. Dragon Rider 97 Race. Human Level. 0 HP 5/5 MP 5/5 XP. 0/20 Class. Warlock STR 5/AGI. 5/VIT. 5 STM. 5/int. 5/magic. 5. Warlock, Active Abilities, Warlock. Cursed Hands, LV.1, 0. Passive Abilities, Warlock. Mental Fortitude, LV.1, Skills. None SP 5 God's Coin. 0 Inventory. Alright. Nothing seems to have changed. Glad to know it. Anyway, open Warlock status. Brian breathed a sigh of relief and called out for Warlock status. Class. Warlock description. Possessing the power of dark magic and curse, you are forever the servant of darkness. Although it grants an immense power of dark magic, it also sucks your lifespan and poisons you with disabilities. Strength. Immense talent of magic, dark magic/other elements, mental fortitude against mental attacks, capabilities of pushing your physical powers beyond the limits of a normal magician. Weakness. Fire, light, spirit, poison, curse, and lifespan. Active abilities. Cursed Hands, LV.1, locked passive abilities. Mental Fortitude, LV.1, locked, O. Class Advancement. Level 25, if it was really on my hands, I would have eliminated all of those weaknesses. Unfortunately, UMA can't allow such things. Anyway, if I get my hands on Elixir of Dragon Heart, I can remove all of those weaknesses except for lifespan. First, let's move inside and find some quests. Brian quickly dismissed the status and walked towards the village. He was wearing a plain brown shirt and pants. He had no weapons in his hand or inventory. And, he had no money either. So, the first thing he must do is to get the quest. And, as a creator, it wouldn't be hard. He walked inside and found some NPCs around the village. Just like the goddess he created, everyone else was created to be basic, but because of the 0.point energy used to create this virtual world, they can evolve on their own. Humans can't absorb 0.point energy without any source like bloodlines. So, they developed new gods to create virtual beings who can absorb 0.point energy and transform it into different sources of power commonly known as supernatural abilities and transfer it to real humans. Humans aren't God. They are just using everything in their arsenals to create a better future. Brian walked up to an old man sitting on the bench while watching over the cattle. Upon reaching near him, Brian spoke, "Sir, I heard about your son in the forest. I am here to inform you that your son is alive." What? The old man jumped up from his bench with shock all over his place. His action cared for the cattle as they moved away. Is that true? The old man held his shoulders and asked with tears coming down his eyes. Yes, but I need you to give me permission to bring back your son. He is still alive. Brian nodded his head and answered. Among many other NPCs, some NPC had quests that they can't reveal by themselves. Players need to find it, one way or another. For Brian, this direct way was easier, but if someone could help the old man, he would get quest by the system. Though, there is one problem. The rewards are quite low. Please. Please, bring back my child. Quest received, quest. Bring back the old man's child description. Child is currently living within the cave of Poison Spider. Defeat the poison spider and bring the child back. Condition. Child can't die. Reward. 50 XP, 5 God's coins, and shadow escape skill. Nice. Although XP and coins are less, I can get a skill by completing this quest. As for XP, I can get enough by aimlessly killing monsters in the forest. What I needed was an actual skill to increase my strength. But, poison spider is going to be trouble, especially with my class. I need to be careful. Don't worry, sir. I will bring back your son very soon. Finally, Brian left the village. He had remembered the layout of this village in his mind. So, he immediately reached the forest in just 10 minutes. As a normal human, this was his best running speed. He could buy a map from the menu, but he had no money. And, the forest was only 1 mile away. But he quickly realizes that he was getting tired. Running was one thing, stamina was something he needs to take care of. So, he rested on the edge of the forest for 10 minutes and finally moved inside the village. The cave of the spider was located in the south. It was filled with small poisonous spiders. He didn't plan to outright go there. Instead, he walked near the middle where normal boars live. The forest is designed for different difficulties. For beginners, the middle section was great because one can find one boar in a certain area instead of a group. But, in the west, a player will find a pack of wolves. Although the strength of wolves won't be that high, it would still be harder to defeat them. Brian was trying to look out for players as well. He didn't want anyone else to get his loot. The one who deals the final blow will get the reward unless it is a team battle. So, he can't let anyone steal his kill. After reaching a certain distance, he spotted a boar at a distance. The boar was moving near the tree and it was completely unaware of Brian's presence. But, boar is agile. So, he can't miss his opportunity. He slowly moves behind the tree and starts closing the distance by moving from the sides. Fortunately, there were many trees so he was quite hidden, and with proper sneaking, he wasn't discovered as well. He could use the cursed hands for a powerful attack, but this will also have a side effect. So, unless he gets elixir of dragon heart, he will try to use cursed hands as less as he can. Upon reaching nearly a meter close to the boar, just behind the tree, he picks up a small rock nearby and throws it behind the boar. Bang! Gaw! Thud! Bang! Thud! As soon as the rock hits the ground, the boar jumped out of fright and moved straight, but at this moment, it didn't notice a kick coming from the side. Brian kicked it on its stomach as it rolled on the ground. Brian chased him and kicked again. Finally, he stomped his foot on the ground and pounced on the boar. His right leg bent and his knee struck his head until it collided with the tree and the blood spilled out of its head. You killed LV.1 boar, you received 5 XP, you received boar meat. In front of him, the boar turns into small particles and disappears. At the same time, a chunk of boar's meat appears in his inventory. After killing the boar, he moves towards the next boar. Once the boar dies, it takes an entire day to get resurrected. This is to prevent players from killing the same monster. After leaving this place, he quickly finds another boar. Unlike the previous boar, this boar was bigger, which represented its level as well. But, instead of running away, Brian chooses to fight it. Just like before, he sneaks on the boar, but this time, he knows he can't use just brute strength to damage it. So, he decides to use magic. Warlock doesn't have weapons, but their magic is the weapon itself. Although he can't use cursed hands, he can still use magic, which gives him immense control over his mana. But since he doesn't have a skill, he can't generate elemental powers or some other powers. Mana is attributeless, and unless someone like him tries to cheat, one needs the skill to use mana properly. But, Warlock has a major advantage with magic stat. They can use the mana for boosting their strength and agility, and even change the mana's shape as they like. Upon sneaking on the boar, he releases his mana, using 3 MP at once. His stats instantly got boosted for a short period of time. So, just like before, he distracts the boar with a rock and kicks it. Then, he continues to slam the boar with his knees and fist. Unlike before, he had to attack more than once and it had to be precise as well. But, after 10 consecutive attacks, he finally kills the boar. You killed LV.2 boar, you received 10 XP, oh. You received boar meat, you received boar bone. Seeing the last notification in front of him, he smiled and opened his inventory. In front of him, a panel with lots of slots appeared. But, only 2 slots had something on them. He clicks on the second slot and a new panel appears. Item. Boar bone description. A strong bone of LV2 boar which can be used to make weapons. Effect. +2 STR, wears off if not used, nice. Let's go hunting some more boars. Taking out a boar bone in his hand, he smirked and closed his inventory, finally leaving this spot. Chapter 10 Daddy named a new skill after his game name. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 20 minutes later, status. Name. Dragon Rider 97 race. Human level. 2 HP, 15/15 MP 15/15 XP. 35/80 class. Warlock STR 15/AGI. 15/VIT. 15 STM. 15/int. 15/magic. 10, Warlock, active abilities, Warlock. Cursed Hands, LV.1, passive abilities, Warlock. Mental Fortitude, LV.1, skills. None SP, 10 God's Coin. 0 Inventory. Boar meat, 30 kilograms, boar bones, 15 kilograms, nice. I finally have some strength but I feel mentally exhausted. 0. Thud. Brian falls on his butt and mutters, using magic continuously hampers mental capabilities. Even though I have mental fortitude, constant use of mana with magic truly does make difference. Magic was part of Warlock. Every player can get access with mana but magic was only possessed by a few classes such as Mage, Cleric, Necromancer, and Warlock. But, each has its own specific magic. Warlock's dark magic is closer to Necromancer's summoning skeleton magic while Mage's light magic is closer to Cleric healing magic. He could use mana to active Cursed Hands. It only costs 2 MP but if he uses it, the curse will impact him as well. So, he wanted to be patient until he gets his hands on Elixir of Dragon Heart. The 5 stats including STR, Strength, AGI, Agility, VIT, Vitality, STM, Stamina, and INT, Intelligence, are the most basic stats. Strength measures one's explosive physical powers. Agility means muscle movement, reaction speed, and running speed. Vitality represents healing ability and endurance. If vitality has reached the highest point, one can even become immortal. Stamina simply means the energy to do everything else. Finally, intelligence doesn't mean knowledge. It means the mana capacity and mana regeneration. If intelligence reaches a higher level, one can even regenerate more than 1 MP per second. Currently, he recovers nearly 1 MP per minute. As for magic, it is an external stat. Unlike the previous 5, this stat appears based on class. And unlike other stats, it doesn't grow with levels. It needs either upgrade in class or SP that he has. Increasing magic doesn't increase mana or regular strength but it does improve his control over mana and the skills. Currently, he has no skills so he can only use his magic effectively to consume less mana. But, if he manages to get a skill or even create a skill, he can increase the power of that skill by increasing magic stats. In other words, it is completely related to his skills. And not just skills, even abilities are related to it. That's why his magic is only 10 and his SP is also 10 where magic should have been 5 and SP should have been 15. He didn't want to use all of the SP since it can be used in an important moment. After a certain time of rest, he finally left the middle part in order to find the spider. He quickly heads to the south and ended up running into a group of spiders. These spiders were nearly half a meter tall. Their legs were truly long, but none of these spiders had the poison. They were just LV.2 monsters. So he decided to go on an offense. Currently, he was 2 times stronger than before. And, unlike boars, these spiders can't be tricked that easily. Of course, he wasn't planning to use brute force alone either. He picked dozens of small branches and infuses his mana into them. Using his magic, his flow of mana was quite strong. He kept storing mana into those branches non-stop. He was neither a swordsman to use mana in his sword or a mage to shoot out a fireball. His cursed hand was quite useless at this moment. So, he got to do everything with what he got. After infusing mana in those branches, he started sharpening them. The spiders were completely unaware of his existence. But, without any sharp object, sharpening them was a hassle. So, he used his mana once again and strengthened his nails. But, he had to now do it quickly. He was using a lot of mana continuously. After sharpening those branches, he picked one of them and pointed at the spider. Oh. Brian had been exercising and training in different martial arts dojos for 2 years now. Although he doesn't have marksmanship precision stat, he can still utilize what he has learned over the course of 2 years. He puts the bundle of branches on a small tree branch before shooting the first branch. Whoosh! Splash! Whoosh! 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 Splash! 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 His hand moved at the lightning speed as he shot those spiders with mana-infused branches. He was basically using his agility and his training to the limit. But, he still missed a lot, nearly 40%. So, as soon as it finished, he rushed towards the spiders while holding 2 bigger and sharper branches. At the same time, he was getting the notification again and again. You killed LV.2 spider, you received 10 XP, you received spider legs, you killed LV.2 spider, you received 10 XP, you received spider legs. Splash! 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 As he dashed towards them, he swung his wooden swords, slashing the remaining spiders. You killed LV.2 spider, you received 10 XP, you received spider legs, you killed LV.2 spider, you received 10 XP, you received spider legs, you killed LV.1 spider, you received 10 XP, you received spider legs, you killed LV.2 spider, you received 10 XP, you received spider legs, your XP bank is full, you level up, you received 5 SP, your XP bank is full, you level up, you received 5 SP. After killing nearly dozens of spiders, he managed to level up 2 times. Status. Name. Dragon Rider 97 Race. Human level. For HP, 25 25 MP 25 25 XP. 15/320 class. Warlock STR 25/AGI. 25/VIT. 25 STM. 25/int. 25/magic. 10, Warlock, active abilities, Warlock. Cursed Hands, LV.1, passive abilities, Warlock. Mental Fortitude, LV.1, skills. None SP, 20 God's Coin. 55 Inventory. Boar Meat, 30 kilograms, Boar Bones, 15 kilograms, Spider Legs, 124 picks, Poison Sac, nice. My mana is recovered as well. Now, let's hunt this spider. Brian finally walked towards a cave nearly 100 meters away from him. The poison spider was level 5. So, even if he had improved, he knew he can't be careless. After all, the monsters inside this game are programmed to evolve. He silently walked into the entrance of the cave. From what he had designed, the poison spider was meant to live at the end of the cave where she stores all of her prey inside her webs but never eats them. But, this led to the old man believing that his son is dead. As he walked inside the cave, he noticed stickiness in the ground. Suddenly, his eyes widen as he somersaults, dodging a web flying to the ceiling. Thud. Damn. That was one hell of a clever trap. Now, I got no choice but to engage in direct battle. Knowing that he was already spotted by the poison spider, Brian wasted no time and dashed inside the cave. As he moves, the light appears in front of him from the small creature known as moonlight bugs. They are placed in every cave and activate whenever a player walks near them. Suddenly, the poison spider spits out webs at him. But, he quickly uses his fast reflexes to dodge them all. Whoosh! 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 Oh, flap! 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 But, just one of the web manages to touch his skin. TCH. I got no choice but to finish this quick. As soon as he got contacted with the poisons, Brian knew he can't delay anymore. He stomped his foot on the ground and his hand slowly turns purple. The mana was gathering at his palm, condensing strange energy and releasing a purple glow. Whoosh! Tap! Cursed hands! He slapped the leg of the spider with his hand. Your enemy has been inflicted with cursed hands, enemy stats have dropped by 50% for the next 10 seconds, cursed hand is affecting player, alright. Here I go. Brian took out 2 bones of boars in his hand and dashed forward. The spider started moving its leg around but its speed was too slow in his eyes. His hands were moving around like a swordsman's hands. Each movement was dodging the attack while inflicting damage to the spider. For the next 8 seconds, he simply struck the spider from every corner. But, when it was the 9th second, he jumped into the air and held both of the bones together. Bang! His bone struck the head of the spider, splitting it in half. But, the next moment, its body scattered around into small spiders. Who? Teacher, can a swordsman fight without swords and skill? Of course, he can. Do you know New Gods? Yes, I know. But, isn't it the same? I mean swordsmen inside the New Gods also need sword and skill. Yeah, you are true, but you are talking about those who treat swords as their weapon. For those who treat everything as a sword, a single trace of mana in a branch can split a boulder. It wasn't small. Nearly 10 mana points worth of mana were released from his body and condensed at his bones. The small spiders instantly dashed toward him with their poisonous legs, but at this moment, Brian takes a step forward and swings his body with full power. Dragon Rider 97 sword style. Dragon Twister. Bang! Did you use the power stones? If you haven't then you should use it here.